From day one, we are told who we should be, how to live, and what's acceptable. Before we even have a chance to discover ourselves, our society has already drawn those lines for us. But what happens when those lines are keeping us from knowing and embracing who we truly are? Welcome to Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox, a podcast about unpacking and unlearning everything that's kept you from living as your true self. Through honest conversations about your internal emotional landscape, sexuality, coming out later in life, relationships, and the journey to self-acceptance, we break free from the boxes we never chose. Hello, and welcome to Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox. I have a couple of different topics today that I wish to cover. I'm going to start with a message that I received on TikTok. I noticed this woman was liking a number of my posts, and then she dropped into my direct messages. And she was commenting on a post that I had done about this thing that happens where women feel so very imprisoned by the lives that they're living and the lives that they, chose to live. But I'm going to say in somewhat of a sleepwalking way, or what I call the conveyor belt, right? We didn't have to really think about what was happening. It was just, this is what you do. If you're a woman, this is what you do. You get married and you have children. And how a number of women, not only queer women, but also many straight women, have felt so imprisoned by the life that they walked into, that they have fantasies of getting out of it. But the only way they can imagine getting out of it is by their spouse passing away, and that they would then be able to get out of this life and also not have to feel guilty and not have to feel like a bad woman. So I did a post on social media on this, and a woman wrote to me. I'm going to read what she wrote to me. And she said, "You had a video that talked about women who secretly wish the demise of their spouse so they can live authentically. I agree with your points. Our toxic culture keeps us in chains, but for me, there is no way out of the life I built, both financially and socially. I have loyalty to my family as well as my husband. I couldn't betray that for some fantasy that might not ever come true. It seems childish, self-centered, and reckless at this point in my life. It's the grass is always greener and the devil ideas. I don't know why I felt the need to write this to you. It's just that sometimes your messages hit me in the gut." So I responded to this woman, and what I shared with her was that, I hear you, right? I hear everything you're saying, but nothing about the work that I do to help women become more aligned and connected to who they are authentically. None of that is about being with someone else. It's about being authentically who you are. And as I've been doing this work for many years, I have found women go through all different stages and phases and ways and choices around how they do this. I admit on my end, I did it in a way. I was young. I didn't have any guidance, and I also had no idea what was going on. And I did completely blow up my life. I would say the way that I did it was somewhat reckless, but also very determined. I needed to be free. I could no longer live the life I was living. I felt like I was dying. I have worked with so many women, especially in my bi-life community, who are in stages of coming into their authenticity. They're getting support in a community. They're in marriages or partnerships with men, and they're also working through the Unbox Your Sexuality program. These women are figuring things out in a way where there's a lot of uncertainty. They don't know what's going to happen, where they're going to land, but they are in the moment to moment present time with their spouse going through this and trying to be authentic to who they are and what they feel, and to not betray themselves anymore. And that might mean that their romantic relationship with their spouse has ended and they've entered into a friendship with their spouse. And that might mean that they're opening up the marriage. And it might mean that they're both exploring other relationships, but they're still together. It might mean that just one of them is exploring. The woman in the relationship is exploring going outside of the marriage. And sometimes the male spouse is not really interested in that, but is supportive of whatever it is that his partner wants to do to be authentically herself. After being with someone who was clearly struggling for a number of years, they want this for their spouse and for their partner and for their friend that they have spent a life with and built a family with. For any of you out there that kind of feel what this woman said to me, I couldn't betray my family or my husband for some fantasy that might not ever come true. It seems childish, self-centered, and reckless. And yet my messages seem to punch her in the gut. What I shared back was, and I said this before, none of this is about someone else. This is not about being with someone else. This is about finding who you authentically are, and what you do with who you authentically are leaves you a lot of choices. There's not only one way this goes. There's many women who stay in marriages and open the marriage. There are many women who leave the marriages and remain in friendship with their ex. There are women who go through this and leave their marriages and are unable to remain in any kind of contact or relationship with their ex that feels good. So there are a million ways of going about this, but this whole process is not about just some fantasy of having sex with a woman. That is not what any of what I do is about. It's not what Unbox Your Sexuality is about. That program is built to help you unpack and unlearn and then unleash yourself from the conditioning and expectations that society has put upon you. This program would also benefit straight women. This is not about how you're going to end up having sex with a woman or being partnered with a woman. This is about you. It's about the work you're doing on yourself to know yourself. Many of us spend years in therapy, myself included. I will admit, I have had 33 years of therapy, and I know myself inside and out. I'm sure that in partnerships, I would see new parts of myself that I've never met before with different people. Different people bring out different things. But, in 33 years of therapy, I learned a lot about myself. And in this program, you are doing some light speed work through methods that are going to teach you about yourself in ways that it will take years to do in therapy. Do you still have to spend a lot of time once you finish the program processing everything? Absolutely. It will still take you years, because if it took you 50 years to get to where you are today, it will still take you, I'm going to say 50 years to, undo where you are today. This is life work, right? But there is a dedication to no longer betraying ourselves because this is what society told us was the right path. This is not about the grass is greener on the other side. And it's not about grabbing a woman, having sex with her, and spending the rest of your life with her. This is about you. This is about you living authentically. So, this woman's message really, it impacted me, that somehow what she got from what I was saying was that the grass was greener on the other side. One of the things I see most often in women is a deep terror and fear of being alone, and that aloneness feels like an equivalent to death. If they're alone, it's like they're going to die. I can tell you that the women that have gone through the Unbox Your Sexuality program do not feel that anymore. And in fact, they begin to feel that being alone is being with themselves. And it's not a without. It's not I'm without everybody. It's I am with myself. I can show up for myself. I can depend on myself. After a lifetime of showing up for a million other people other than yourself, and also feeling deeply dependent on other people in order for you to survive. So, I think it's really easy when you haven't done the deep work to go to this place where you think what I'm talking about is the grass being greener on the other side, and that it's all about some fantasy. But that is not what it's about. It is about being authentically who you are. In light of that, I have been asked also many, many times by many women, what can I read that's going to help me understand some of this? Like, where can I find a book that, if I read it, I'm going to get some of this information that you talk about. And I've struggled because there isn't like one book, honestly. I am very much planning on writing that book, but until that book is written, I have asked people to look at Jane Ward, who wrote a book just recently called The Tragedy of Heterosexuality, which is a sociological book and an overview of how heterosexuality was formed and created and turned into a patriarchal construct that benefits capitalism and men. The book is quite revealing about how we got to this place we are today, where, there's this blind entry into marriage and relationships. And like, this is just what you do. Like, this is what we've learned and this is just what you do. So that book is the most recent book that I recommend. But with this woman's comment in my DMs talking about how she felt a punch in her gut, it made me think back to when I was coming out when I was 32. And I read a book called The Bitch in the House. It's an anthology. So it's 26 writers, women's stories. And they each told stories of marriage, having family, career, identity, identity loss, grief, very raw, very real. Each story was about women showing up in the world as anything other than flexible and pleasing and tending to everybody's needs, that they were basically the bitch in the house. So I read this before I came out. It definitely woke me up, and I could see a lot of the feelings I was having echoed through these women's stories. And it was a punch in the gut for me. It really resonated with me. Early in my coming out, in the first year or so, I went to Provincetown with my first female partner, and we went to a bookstore there. It was a gay bookstore, and I found a book called Flux by Peggy Orenstein. And that book was my second punch in a gut. And it was more of a sociological book, but it talked about the societal expectations. And it was the first time I had ever seen anything like that. I was a psychology major in college. I did not do women's studies. It's certainly possible that all of that information was in women's studies if you had that as a major, but that's not what I majored in. I had no idea about any of these societal expectations until I read this book that talked a lot about the choices women make to stay home and raise their kids, and the difficulty in making that choice and the difficulty in not making that choice, right? So the difficulty in giving up a career and giving up some independence and career satisfaction for motherhood and parenting and stay at home, housewife kind of working in the home, how the value of that in society is so much lower than working outside the home. But as women, when we have children and work outside the home, we also get a lot of backlash for that, because women are supposed to stay home and tend to everybody's needs. So we get backlash from society. It could be relatives of ours or just in general, like society in general is frowning upon you. And then we also have our own struggle with it. And we feel like we are, giving something up to get something, right? We're giving up a career, we're giving up independence, we're giving up, financial gain. We're giving up moving forward in whatever ways we want to by staying home with our kids. And we struggle with that. And then if we go to work, we struggle with missing our kids and wishing we could be home with our kids. So this is not easy by any means for any woman. This book went into the depth of the expectations of society and how much struggle there is for women, and also how devalued women are that do stay home, and how you end up in a situation where you are fully dependent on your spouse for support. And so this place of being alone and this fear of being alone and not being with a spouse for so many women, right? I'm terrified of being alone makes a lot of sense when you put it in context with women that have stayed home, taken care of the kids, been fully dependent on a spouse for all income, that if they don't have that, they feel like they're not going to survive, and it's kind of the equivalent of death. Also, many of us move into these relationships when we're young and we haven't even fully developed into ourselves and lived on our own and developed our full selves. We're still kind of kids when we move into these relationships. We don't even realize that we can depend on ourselves, that we are really high functioning. And, there's just a lot of terror and a lot of fear that I hear. This is the most common thing, honestly, that I hear from women, is a fear of being alone. When women have gone through Unbox Your Sexuality and they've done the work, their fear of being alone has shifted, and they realize that they can show up for themselves and that they will be okay with themselves, which is very rewarding to watch happen, and to watch the fear turn into self-love and self-energy and ways of being with themselves that they never knew before. They've never learned before. They've never understood themselves before. They've never understood why they feel all of these ways before. And I get it, because I was all of these women. I really was. I was a stay-at-home mother, and I was home with the kids for 5 years, 6 years before I started going through a divorce. And that divorce left me having to get back to work. And I struggled leaving my kids and going back to work and not being around and having to be out at night because I was in school and I had to work and get my clinical hours and all the things I needed to do, and leaving my kids with babysitters. I struggled with that. And I also had no choice. I had to do it. And it's real. The struggle is real. So I guess I just want to say that all of this that I'm on here talking about is not about some childish fantasy on the other side. It's not about the grass is greener. It's not about some sexual experience that you're going to have. Is that anywhere in all of this? Sure, because pleasure is part of what I talk about and part of what you deserve, right? And most likely you have not learned that, whether it was religion that taught you that or just society, right? Pleasure is part of it, but that is not just the focus of this. This is about authenticity. This is about being aligned with who you are in the world. It's about not betraying yourself, right? Not just having sex with your spouse because you are supposed to, according to what you learned, that is your job and that is your duty, but it feels terrible. And each time you do it, you have to dissociate, right? That is not authentic. You're not being authentic in those moments. You're not aligned with yourself in those moments. So there is some kind of a betrayal that happens. And when those betrayals happen, your internal system learns to not really trust you because you are continually betraying it. And it creates a lot of chaos internally. And that is the work of the program. That is the work of unpacking and unlearning and unleashing yourself. And it is work that you will continue to do for the remainder of time, right? Because we want to continue to learn and grow and evolve. I mean, that's what we're here for. That is really what we're here for, is to evolve. So I encourage any of you that are trying to understand this to look at any of those 3 books that I mentioned, see if anything resonates with you. Also to know that the Bi Life community is a loving, supporting space for all not straight sexualities. You can be married, you can be partnered, you may be single, but for all not straight sexualities, it is a loving, supportive community. And many of the members of the community are also doing the work in the Unbox Your Sexuality program. so you will be around like-minded people who are also doing the work. That's it for today. I am wishing you a beautiful holiday if you celebrate Christmas, and I will be back before the new year. Oh, and happy winter solstice. Thank you for spending this time with me on Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more folks find these conversations. If you're ready to unbox from something that's keeping you stuck, I would love to support you. You can find the application to the show at unboxyoursexuality.com. Let's stay connected. Find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Lesbian Curiosity Coach. Give me a follow and join the conversation. Remember, we only have this one time through. Why not unbox yourself and let your true self shine in all its beautiful glory?